Welcome back to Learning with Merit. Today we're going to talk about Eclipse, and specifically as an IDE for Java developers, and we're going to talk about how we can integrate GitHub with Eclipse as well. So if we look at our itinerary here, we have our public class Eclipse and Github. We're going to look at downloading and installing Eclipse, how to import a configuration file, which will really help you, especially if you're doing this a lot or if you're a teacher even, creating a workspace, default workspace locations, setting up your own workspace, creating a project, creating a new class, importing a Java file, and then setting up Eclipse with GitHub. Now, there is a lot more to Eclipse than what we are going to cover today, and we couldn't possibly cover it all in a reasonably linked video. But as new things come up and they seem to become more important, I may create further videos. But right now, that seems to be the most important thing that I have to know in order to work with Java in Eclipse. So let's take a look at how we can download and install Eclipse. So if we come here to our Google, we can type in Eclipse, and believe it or not, it's one of the first things that pops up even before a solar or lunar or any other type of actual eclipse. The Eclipse IDE will pop up. So if we click on this, you see it doesn't say anything about an IDE, but you do see download up here. We're going to click on download. It'll take us to this page, and we see get Eclipse. We want to download that. Go ahead and decline whatever they're sending at us. And finally click download here. Again, they're going to ask for some money. You can go ahead and ignore that unless you feel compelled to donate. Once we get it downloaded, we can go to our downloads folder. And you should see this executable here. I'm not going to walk you through the entire installation process. There is not a lot of complexity to it. Mostly you just go with the defaults and agree to their license agreements and things like that. I'm going to see if it will load up reasonably here. Here's probably the most important part of the install, is picking which one of these, oh my gosh, do I use. For most of us who are working in Java, it's going to be this one right here, and for this tutorial, that is the one that we would pick. So you'd click on that one, and you would follow the process along and get it installed. I already have it installed, so we're going to go ahead and skip that tedious process of installing, and we're going to look at how do we import a configuration file. So when I open up my Eclipse here, it oftentimes will take it just a minute to load up. But when you have the power of a pause button to pause your recording, you don't have to sit around and wait for it to load. You can have it now. Alright, so if we take a look at this, this is not exactly what it'll look like whenever you get started, but it is more like what it'll look like once you go through this entire process. So I'm going to show you first a little closer to maybe what it will look like if we were to create a new workspace. So I'm going to go down here and switch my workspace, go to other, and it says add an existing or create a new workspace. I'm going to create one, and I'm going to go to my desktop, and then I'm going to add just a new workspace for this tutorial here. So it's going to stop, it's going to reload here. You may be greeted with this particular little window here, and I usually just skip this and ignore it. It hasn't been that big of an issue for me, and so I have just chosen to disregard it. This is more like what you might see whenever you originally load up. It is not exactly, because I have installed another theme, but you may be greeted with this page. And of course, I do recommend that you go through, create a Hello World application, create a new Java project, and some of their other tutorials that are on here. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and close that. If you ever want to get back to it, you can go to Help up here, and you see the little welcome guy. We can click on Welcome, and it'll take you back to it. So this looks pretty close to what you might actually be greeted with whenever when you start up Eclipse for the first time. it assumes, you know, of course, you want to be a Java developer, so it sort of gives you the tools for Java here. Now, what we want to do is we want to import a configuration file to set up some things. And I'm going to use a configuration file I use with my classes here because it's the way I like to set it up. And it does remove some things that maybe you might want. For example, all of the errors and warnings and stuff that a typical IDE may tell you, I have totally removed. That's partially for teaching, and I also just can't stand all of the errors and things popping up unless I want them to be there. So if we go to File and we go to Import, you'll be greeted with a whole bunch of folders that are totally daunting, very scary to look at because you're not sure what you need to click on. Right here next to General, we're going to click that arrow. We're going to find Preferences there. We're going to click Next. Then it says From Preference File. We're going to go to Browse, and we're looking for the file that we want. In this case, it just so happened to take me right where I wanted to go. But here I have a file called Eclipse Config V1 for version 1.epf. That EPF file is going to be your Java configuration file. So you may find some on the internet, and you'd be careful getting things off the internet, of course, but you may find one that you like and does all the configs for you, or you can actually create your own. I'll show you how to do that in just a second. So I picked that one, and I'll go ahead and I'm going to click Finish. Everything that is default on there is good. It says importing preferences may leave Workbench in an inconsistent state. It's recommended to restart, so we'll let it do that. All right, we're back now, and what we can see here is some things have changed. Like we have this nice new dark mode going on here. And that's part of that configuration file there. So if we look at what we've got going on here, the next thing that we need to do is actually look at how do we create a workspace. Now there's a default workspace that is created, and I'm not actually in it right now, but I can show you where it is. So if we go to, and I'm going to hit Windows and R and type in Explorer, and this is just the file Explorer whenever I do this. Didn't want to pop up correctly. I'll have to pop it up right there. Okay, so if you do that though and hit enter, it should pop up your Explorer. It usually does, but there's some weird little glitch or something. When we look at this, we can come over here and we can see, okay, we've got desktop downloads, blah, 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 blah. Click on this PC and then go to your local disk. Click on your local disk and find users. Then you should find your username. Now in here somewhere you will probably find something that says Eclipse Workspace, like this one right here. That's the default workspace, and here I have several folders. You're looking for this source folder, SRC, and that's where any Java that you've done so far will be. So like here's my test file that you saw a minute ago whenever I was working in my default space. I had this test.java file. And I could open that with like VS Code, for example, and look at it here. Go ahead and exit out of that though. So that's where you can find your files. It's going to be in the local disk, users, your username, Eclipse Workspace. That's the default one. And then you'll have some sort of project name. In this case, it was just T because it was just a test workspace. And then source, and then maybe a package name, again, which just so happened to be T. And then in that package, you will find your Java file. So once you find the Eclipse Workspace, it's actually pretty easy to find it from there. You just have to search around a little bit until you see a .java file. So that's where our default workspace is. But maybe we don't want to deal with the default workspace. In fact, it's usually recommended that you create your own. So we're going to go to File, and you saw me do it a second ago. I'm going to click on Switch Workspace, and here we have the ones that I usually work in, right? And I got My Workspace and Eclipse Workspace. Let's go to Other, and you can see Add or Create a New Workspace, and we click on that. And of course, it gives me a path here. Right now, it's to the desktop. Well, maybe I want to create a demo. I'm gonna call mine Demo Workspace because we're demoing this. and click launch. Whenever that happens, it's going to want to restart here, and it's going to start booting up again, and we're going to see, well, that config stuff that we did is going to go away, and we'd have to reintroduce it. All right, and here we go. So now we've got that default sort of view again going on. We can exit out of that, and you'll see if we come down here to File, we've got Switch Workspace. Now we've got those 3 different workspaces to look at. And you can actually change a few things so that your workspace is always at the top. You can sort of read that. Anyway, that's not important, but it is some of those things that you can actually change about Eclipse that are kind of cool. But anyway, so we've got File, and then of course we can go to another workspace if we wanted to. And I'm going to go back to the new workspace I created just a minute ago. And of course you can set different things as default. But now we know, whenever I created that, we know exactly where all of the files are, and so we don't have to worry about the default or being confused. We actually placed it where we wanted to so that we can mess around with it. So I'm going to go to the new workspace here and set that up, let it restart once again for the upteenth time. Now that's loaded back up, let's talk about a couple of things. So we're looking at here, we've got lots of different windows and things to mess with, and let's clean this up just a little bit, make ourselves a little more comfortable, especially if we're first using this. We can get rid of task list, we won't need that for now. Outline, we can also get rid of that. Problems, Java doc, and declaration, we can get rid of those. Up here under window, we can click on window and click and hover over show view, and we want console, so we're going to click on console. Console is where our output's going to go to from our code. So basically what we have is we have our files over here in Package Explorer that we're going to mess with. We have our console for our output, and then here in the middle we will have where all of the text goes. Now you can move this around if you want. Like I'm clicking and dragging the console, I can move the console over here, have it output here, and have my code here if you like that. And so you could have like a tiny little package space, and then a little bit of room for the console over here, and then all this straight up and down to actually write your code. I'm going to go back to sort of the default here, just so that everybody's on the same page. All right, now we're going to talk about creating a project. So in an IDE like this, in order for everything to run smoothly, we sort of have to follow a format. And while right now we may be just working with one class or just a few files or doing something like that, we're not creating anything big yet, right? It may seem kind of stupid to do all of the things we're about to do. But I can promise you it makes a lot more sense once you're starting to build larger projects that do some function. Having this format, this structure to what we're building makes a lot more sense. So bear with it for now while it's kind of overcomplicated for just creating one file and running it. And hopefully it'll begin to make more sense as you start to build bigger and bigger things. So in order to actually run any code or do anything, we need to create a Java project. So we're going to click Create a Java Project. And we need to give it a good project name. And I'm going to call it Demo for now. Notice I used a lowercase letter to begin with there by convention. So you can mess around with this stuff, but you don't really need to. I'm just going to click Finish. And it's going to set it all up for us. Then over here, you'll be able to see we've got demo. This is the entire library. Okay. JRE system library. It's actually very cool. Basically, it's all a bunch of code that somebody else wrote that you have access to if you need it. Very cool to look through, which you definitely should do at some point. Anyway, then we have our SRC file, which stands for source. This is where our code is going to go. We have a little module info file. If I double click on that, you'll see it doesn't really have much in it yet. It will eventually include more things depending on what you do. You don't necessarily have to have it. It's just something that got defaulted in. Okay. So under source, we are going to create a new class. Now this will usually create a package with it. So under source we'll have packages, and then inside the packages we'll have classes. So we have a project and then a package and then a class, right? Okay, so source, new, go to class. Class always starts with a capital letter, so we're going to call this demo. We're going to leave everything like it is and click finish. You'll see that it opened up a new file for me. I'm going to make this bigger so you can see it, just like that. You'll see that it pops up over here under a default demo package. So the package is the same name as the project there. Okay, so now we have our little Java file to get started with. We're going to do something simple. We'll do public static void main string. Oh, not sting. You know what, let's just leave string args off of it for now. We don't really need command line arguments anyway at the moment. And we're going to do a system out print. This one will say hello world, just to be cliche. Alright, so now that we got that set up, hopefully we can click run here and it will actually print out to the console. Let's check and make sure that I'm not a horrible programmer here. Oops. Gotta right click, go to run as. See what our run configurations have got us as. Should allow us to run this. Alright, got it fixed there. So I went ahead and added the string args and then, you know, semicolon, because you should have a semicolon at the end there. And that seemed to fix it. So now that when I hit run, you'll see we've got hello world printed out. So that's exactly sort of what we want to have. Now here comes the interesting part. Integrating GitHub with this sort of IDE here. Oh, actually, before that, I forgot, we need to show you how to import a file. So let's say I want to import a Java file that I haven't actually written in here. It's not as simple as clicking and dragging, right? Or doing something like that, or even just moving the file into the directory from the File Explorer. We need to actually do it from here. So we're going to go to demo here, and you see how I clicked on the package because I want to import it right here. So we're going to go to demo. We're going to go to import. And then this time, instead of preferences, we're going to file system. And then it's asking us, what directory do you want to do this from? So we're going to browse, and I'm just going to pick my desktop because I do have a couple of Java files there. So there's github-setup.java and Eclipse and Github.java. I'm going to click on Eclipse and Github.java and click finish. And you'll see now that I've done that, it's added it here, and it may not seem like that was important to do, but doing it that way has prevented any major errors, right? So anyway, here we have our little notes on what we're working on here. So that's pretty simple to import a Java file. All right, now setting up Eclipse with GitHub is probably the most intensive part of this, because there's a lot of different little settings we're going to have to go and look at. Let's go ahead and start with the easiest stuff. So up here in the right hand corner, you will see Open Perspective, and you can click on that and you should see Git on there somewhere, G-I-T. We're going to click on that and click Open. What we'll see now is it shows us a little tab of Git repositories, and I'm going to go ahead and go to Window and Show View and get my Package Explorer back. So it brings my Package Explorer back. I'm going to drag that back up to the top where I had it. So now we have, like I said, a couple things have changed. We have our Git repositories right here, and we're going to bring that in just a second. Here is our Package Explorer, and then it's got history, synchronize, Git staging, all that sort of stuff. I'm going to go ahead and leave that out of the way just for now. Okay. Just exit out of those. Drag this over. Okay, so now we have a couple of things that we need to do. So we have add an existing local Git repository, clone a Git repository, and I think what we want to do is we want to clone one. So we've already created one in a previous video. Let's go ahead and just clone one. So we're going to click clone here, and it says clone URI. We're going to go to next, and the URI we want to give it is, depending on which one you give it, will depend a little bit. So here we're going to click here. We are going to go to GitHub. There's GitHub right there. Here is our repository. If we click on code there, we've got HTTPS and we've got SSH. You can arguably use either one. The reason I'm going to use SSH is because I don't want to have to use passwords. And in fact, GitHub won't even really let you use passwords with what we're trying to do anymore. So we're going to copy that right there because we're going to need that. We're going to go back here and we are going to paste that just like that. You'll see the protocol shows up as SSH. The user's Git looks like we're doing well. Of course, there is no password yet. So we'll click next. Now here's what it'll say. It'll say an error occurred when trying to get this. So see this error log. So what we need to do is actually go up here and we need to find preferences. So if we go to Window and we go to Preferences, part of our issue is that we need our SSH keys in order for this to work. So we're going to say SSH in our filter, and you'll see SSH2. We're going to click on that, and you'll see it has SSH2 home, where we've got .ssh. We want to add a private key. It should take us to our SSH directory, otherwise you can find that in your user directory, and we want to add the private key. So there's our public, there's our private, we want to add that one. Okay. And then authentication methods, we want to make sure that public key, let's put that all the way at the top there. Make sure it's checked and all the way at the top. Click apply and close. So that helps. Let's see if we can clone the repository now. So it's got all the stuff there again. Let's go ahead and click next. Let's see if it says anything. Ooh, got a little further that time, didn't we? Now we click next and finish. And there we go. So you see the first time it didn't work because we didn't have the SSH private key uploaded so that we could actually access that repository. Now that we do, we can actually access what we're doing here. Now we want to add to this repository. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to come up here to the package, which is called demo. I'm going to go right click on it. We're going to find where it says team and then share project. Right? And it says what repository. So I'm going to click my drop down. I only have one repository here. I'm going to click on that one. I'm going to click finish. So now what we have, and it's sort of removed my editor there, is we now have it set up where this project is inside of this repository. Let's see if we can go find it. We've got working tree right here, and you'll see demo, then source, then demo again, then there's demo.java and Eclipse and github.java. So as we make updates to this up here, we'll be making updates to this. And if we want to, in fact, I can double click on that. See, there's our demo.java. If I want to make updates to the repository, actually push my updates up, we've got some things we can click on here. So we've got, let's see, there's create a new repository there, collapse all, I got all that stuff. But what I can actually do is now that I've got it set up, I can right click on this package and I can come down here to team and you'll see all kinds of things now show up. So I can go to commit. I want to make a commit here. which will bring up this GitHub staging little tab. And you can see this here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and we are going to select everything. So basically, these are all the changes that we've made that haven't been uploaded to the repository on GitHub yet. So we're going to just, I'm holding control and clicking all of these just like that. And then I'm going to drag them down here to stage changes. So basically this is doing all those commands for us. So I did a previous video about Git and GitHub and did all the commands on the command line. This is doing those commands for us. So we're moving to stage changes here. Now we need to write a commit message, and we're going to say in this commit message, updated with GitHub, or I'm sorry, with Eclipse. So updated with Eclipse. And now I should, if I've done everything correctly, be able to commit and push. And now that I've done that, here's what it says back to me. Repository, whoops, it's very large, unfortunately. Let's see if I can make it a little smaller. I cannot, unfortunately. But what I can tell you is that it was, in fact, updated. Sorry, had a couple of little things pop up there, but it was in fact updated whenever we did that, and we should be able to go and check and make sure that it was, and reload here. You see now there is the demo folder, and in here we have a source, and in source we have another demo, and there's our demo.java and Eclipse and GitHub right there. So very, very cool stuff. Can definitely be confusing on the front end with all of the different windows and things we've got going on there. But now we can actually include GitHub with Eclipse, and it allows us to sort of seamlessly work on things. Let's say you've got Eclipse at home, you've got Eclipse maybe at another place like work, right? And you want to be able to work on your stuff back and forth across those. It makes it very easy to do that without having to do anything crazy. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Of course, it was very educational putting it together, and I appreciate you watching Learning with Merit.